Hello, guys. Welcome to Tech 404 by Team 404 with Roberto, Syrone, and me, Greatzel. And our client Jim Wood isn't here, but we thought of putting him in this presentation anyway because this is his idea. All right. So first things first, we want to tell you the goal of our first sprint. The original goal of our first sprint was for the user to define a test specification through the web client that we made. And then we will use that data to produce a JSON file. Spoiler alert, we've only done probably half of that. We were able to create a somewhat working web client, and at some point it is able to communicate with the controller, but we weren't able to reach to the part where we could generate a JSON file. So we definitely overestimated what we were planning to do for this sprint, but that's okay. We'll keep going. So first things first is we have to demonstrate our implemented features, and the first person that will oops, my bad. The first person that will demonstrate that is Syrone. Your screen is loading. Give it a second, and it's ready.
Give it a second. It's loading currently. Okay, so I was in charge of doing the input parameters. So for my section, I had to program the the text boxes of where you should put the name of their input parameter, with your specifications of your input parameter. While you do that, after you're done adding all the input parameters that you need, you would then add the equivalence classes. One input parameter can have many input classes, so it has to have the ability to add more and more and more every time you click that button. I'm having a couple errors currently with the boxes. It's not going the way I wanted, but it's a work in progress. So I'm working towards taking the information from my input parameters to so it can inherit to the next class. If you get what I'm saying. And great, so I think.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much, Syrone. And on my end, and by the way, since we're doing MVC, ASP, our framework is ASP.NET MVC. We're working on different parts of the project, and that's okay because MVC. All right, so my job was to do the coverage groups, and this is what it is. This is the coverage group. And the coverage group is where I'm able to compare each input parameter to another input parameter. Um, it was it was a bit difficult at first to figure out how this form should work, but ultimately I decided, okay, I'm gonna add the names first. So for example, group A, group B, and group C. Oh, before I do that, I want to demonstrate that I am able to get this data and pass it to the controller, sending it through post. So let me just do this breakpoint for you and relaunch this real quick. All right. So this is the index of the website. If I go to coverage group, let's say I have three. I have group A, group B, and group C coverage groups, and I submit this, and let's check here. So right now it says null, but if I go into this, there you go. I hope it's clear that if you can see, group name now has group A, group B, and group C. So the form is able to communicate with the view, or the controller, rather, is able to communicate with the view. So that's what we have for the coverage group. Now, in addition to the coverage group, after adding these, the what's supposed to happen is I should be able to add members. So this is currently not working yet. Supposedly supposed to have group A, group B, and group C, depending on how many coverage groups that I have named, and I should be able to add members. The add members is working, although I need this to be dynamic. This test reference just to make sure that that this HTML is connected to the JavaScript file. So currently, that is what I have implemented. In addition to this, I also did the index, make it look a bit nicer, a little how-to. This was mostly from our client, but these links go into the forms. A little about our team, and some resources that are also from the client. And that's it for my implementation. Roberto?
Yes. Um, so for my part, what I did for the front end was that was for expected results and for the test specification. So the expected result it has three input parameters. I mean not parameters, but it has three input boxes. It's a name, text, and condition. And you can have several expected results for each specification. And it's just very basic. It still doesn't store any data yet. It's just a basic interface for now, but it's pretty much close to being done in terms of like the UI, because you don't really require any other uh feature here. Just add and remove it as expect a result and submit it. And as far as that goes, that's probably as far as the UI goes for my part. And so in the sprint, we were supposed to take in all these specifications and uh parse it into a JSON file, right? But that we did not get close enough to where we were actually going to use the reference code that we got at the beginning, right? So I just spend majority of my time trying to rework around the code, get rid of some of the code that used other types of file extensions like XML. So this code basically was reclaimed to only use JSON. And we also added some specific like some of the test specification to test the models, and they haven't been tested yet, but they will be tested soon, I guess. Um,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so I basically just built the back. It started to build the back end, but it's still very very baby steps, I guess. It's still taking its baby steps.
So basically, we just need to. I believe our client Jim has told us to test the code pruning that Roberto did. I only did like one class, but we have to use the tests already in Jim's source code to check if Roberto's pruned code pruning works. So right now, technically, we did try to get something done in the back end, mostly Roberto, but we were just not able to have the front end and back end communicate in time. All right. So next is we will compare our team's commitments on Jira versus what was implemented. Syrone, do you want to start?
All right. All right. So from what you've seen on the build that I had, one second, let me get it back up here. I believe every time I run this, it automatically cancels out the Google Chrome I had before. So give me a second. Let me go back. Okay. So I was supposed to build the front end, which was the parameters and the add new equivalence classes. As you can see if I can get these ones. From what you see, it doesn't look like it's what's it supposed to. Because the add parameters button is only supposed to be like a text, and then right beside it is supposed to be an image of like a plus sign. You're supposed to be able to click the plus sign, and then the text boxes pop up, and then you should be able to press the enter button so it submits what you have typed in. Along with, but with the equivalence classes, it's a dynamic button that's supposed to be. The thing I was supposed to do was build a dynamic button that was triggered by pressing the plus sign from the input parameters. However, I currently having trouble finding a way to link the two buttons together. So from what was supposed to be done and what actually was done is severely different. I'm working towards fixing that, but for right now, I wanted to get the ability to actually enter and write and type and add boxes onto our our project. Okay, I
Okay.
believe that's it.
All right. Thank you. And now for me, let's see. So I should also mention that um, it is quite a challenge to determine what should be done in your sprint, I realized. Because there are things I put in Jira that there are things that I put in Jira or that I did not put in Jira that I did. And let's start with what I did not put in Jira that I worked on is are these is the index, the how to, the about, and the resources. So I failed to put that on Jira. Um, and by the way, these HTML files have to work within the framework, ASP.NET, and that was also a challenge. You would think that oh, I've done HTML before, I know what it does, but with the addition to the framework, it gets a bit more complicated. All right, so now if I compare what I've done, or if I compare what's that? My commitment on Jira and what was implemented. There are two things that are not finished yet. One is the build coverage group members add button. One of the reasons why is that although I do have an add members button, it doesn't work the way it's supposed to. Um, there needs to be an added functionality to this front end feature. So I kept that in progress. While the coverage group class, I only did a enough to save the name, to test if I could save the name here in this constructor, but I wasn't able to test this either. So I've only made a really short coverage group class based on the source code of our client, Jim. So that are the two things, but the rest, build the navigation tabs, all these, build the wireframe, the one that Syrone showed you just now with the input parameters and equivalent class wireframe. That one's done. The coverage group names form, we have it here. And you could also remove some of the names if you decide to. Build coverage group tab, which is over here. So yeah, although I didn't put all the things that we were supposed to do, and we weren't able to really continue with the back end, that's what I've accomplished so far, but we still aren't really done yet. This is a problem, the ad group is or add members button is a problem currently. But yeah, I'm working on it. And Roberto, would you like to share to us what your commitments have been and your implementation?
So my commitments look um they don't look like a lot, right? And the reason being was like our initial in our initial sprint, we wanted to divide the work like kind of evenly, right? But we didn't realize how much we were actually setting, like how much work we were actually setting into the sprint. So I basically created like a general task, which was kind of like dumb, I know. Like it's not the smartest way to do it. It's better to just set like little steps, you know. Um and I ended up not completing it. Reason being why we really needed a front, like the front end to be set up first. And I'm pretty sure like that's an experience all three of us like learned. We if you want input, right, you really want to get like the user input first on the GUI. I was gonna try to hard code some stuff too, but um the biggest challenge was not actually to create this file, right, from just hard coding, because it already like our reference code that we got, it already pretty much does. Our biggest challenge was actually connecting our MVC and our front end to the basically to the MVC, to the view controller. So explaining this a little bit, so front end build, expected results form. So this one, the form is pretty much done, but it still has no functionality, so that's why I still have it in progress. Um, this is pretty much the entire sprint, honestly. It's a very bad to do specification. The backend, the user, right? So this is basically the backend part of the test sprint. What we're just supposed to do, just like um toss out the JSON file from a C sharp object, and the front end expect the result interface. I should move this here because the interface is pretty much done. I'm sorry for that. And yeah, this one's not done, but it's for some reason it just dragged it over there. So I guess I'll just put
I
it.
think that was the first mistakes we did when we
Yes.
dragged it because we wanted to have something a bit cleaner, but we were
Mhm.
advised by Dr. B not to do it. All right. Roberto, once you're done with that, would you show us our burn down chart?
Yeah, I'll show the burnout chart soon. Okay, so and write input parameter class. Okay, so let's just put that on done. Uh, the add a test specification JSON files to test the modified reference code. So I pretty much added the JSON files to test the reference code. But I guess this was the code is still not tested. But this is just a basic test of just adding those JSON files, because just adding them was pretty. It requires some work, because it just doesn't our Visual Studio MVC just doesn't like accept any new file that you just like add in there. You need to create a new file and add like the script itself by either typing it or like pasting it. But you just can't add files like that. It's just weird. It doesn't like it. Um. All right. So that was my analysis of my sprint, right? And pretty bad sprint for me. In terms of managing what I was actually supposed to do and what I ended up doing. Um. So this is our burn down chart, and it pretty much shows how we assigned it more than what we could actually do within the time frame. Um, so it basically shows like we created a very few tasks, right? at the beginning, very general task, and we actually like put them in to do, right? So this was showing that, hey, by the time you guys are about, if you guys are already in progress, right, doing this, guys should be able to finish this task within a week, right? Because of the time we assigned it. And it was not the case, obviously, right? We ended up adding more tasks and more smaller tasks that require even more time. So that's why our remaining values, right, like skyrocketed, right? And at the end, we obviously like added even more tasks to this than we were actually planning on doing. Mostly from tutorials, um, adding like a basic UI, like features, right? Like the drop down menus, like buttons, and like other stuff of that type of nature. Um, so our scope kept changing, like I said, like it just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger, right? We really did not like, like foreshadow our scope correctly and for this sprint. So if I were to actually foreshadow this time, I would say that this sprint is pretty much all we're gonna be able to do for the rest of the semester. But I'm not sure yet, based on our experience on us trying to predict how much is gonna take us.
Uh-huh. And if I could add a little, it's also a learning experience of what can actually be done with an experience, right? Of what can actually be done with the current level of understanding you have in a framework and a problem. So definitely something we can learn from and we could adjust for in our next sprint. Hopefully we could get more done by that time, but lesson learned.
I agree with Gretzl on that. It was a big learning curve and experience.
Mm-hmm. All right. Now for we're already over time, but I hope Dr. B will be okay with it. The last thing we need to do is challenges your team encountered and plans to overcome. So, Cyron?
Okay, I've went through several challenges while trying to get this program to run. One being that I should have took more I should have paid more attention in my not web dev, web technologies class, cuz I didn't know it would come back and I would need it to build the front end, at least, let's say that, because I have to brush up on my dynamic buttons and HTML and JavaScript. So I'm watching YouTube tutorials to brush up on the knowledge that I should have already had or should have kept touched up. And another issue, the main issue that I'm having with this project is I'm having technology difficulties. My computer, I don't think it's compatible with what we're doing, because one minute it was fine and next minute I couldn't run anything or complete any work, and I feel like I held up my team. But thanks to one of my group members, Greatzel, she let me use her laptop and I'm back to work.
Oh, you didn't, Cyron. Sometimes I feel like it's just about experience because some people who have been developing with Macs probably already know what to do, and we just don't currently. And you're missing plans to overcome.
One, I'm gonna be watching YouTube tutorials. I'm also go back because I do have a certification in HTML and CSS and JavaScript. I pretty much think I know how to do this, and I also have the files and the homework and all of the things that we did in web technologies. I'm pretty sure I know how to do what I need to do. I just need to brush back up on it. So I'll plan on be watching YouTube videos and any tutorials and reading up on how to work what I need to do.
All right, thank you. And as for me, um, let's see, my my challenges that I encountered was mostly mental. So if something happens during the week that makes me upset, and it's gonna be really hard for me to get back into the state of working at my best, at my most efficient. And my plans to overcome that is has been mostly going into counseling sessions. As a team, our challenges were mostly technical, I think, right? Like we were missing things. Even if we did watch the tutorial, there were still things that we were missing. So it's probably just experience. And how to overcome, we just need to keep going, is what I think. So that's my part. What about you, Roberto?
Um, well, part of part of the challenge I faced during this during I would say I'm gonna refer back to my role, right? I should have drove like or suggested, because we're all three working in this, and I'm a boss, right? But I should, point out things from for my role as a manager to manage our time more wisely, and I feel like I failed to manage my time as much as how can I put this into words? I basically failed to manage my own self, right? And to where I was actually being more useful to the team as to where like the front ends part, because I really like hoping, right, like to build the front end quick and then like transition to the back end. And I feel like I spend too much time trying to work alone on the back end, right? Trying, and I should have really just like saw through it right away to where like we really need like the front end part, right? We really need to get this user interface going. So hopefully, even if we didn't like finish this sprint completely, right, we would be able to have a more, like a better base of a GUI. So we could actually like define some behavior in the backend. But yeah, that's and hopefully how I plan to fix this next time. Well, from this experience, it seemed to make things more clear just from like living this experience on this first sprint. So I would say that it's something that is fixed, and we need to just well I need to just put it into work into like the next sprint, hopefully.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, it's a good learning experience that we've had, and I'm sure we'll do better next sprint. We are so much over the time, and I'm hoping that's okay with you, Dr. B. Thank you so much for listening, you guys, and I bet y'all understand what we're going through. So thank you, everybody. Bye.
Welcome. Bye.
Bye.